Hey y'all, it's Jasmine and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about how I passed the MPJE on the first attempt. So if you're interested, make sure you keep watching. Also make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to know more about me, my lifestyle, and pharmacy. Thanks for watching, y'all. So I want to give you guys the 100% definition of what the MPJE is. So it is the multi-state pharmacy jurisprudence examination, and it's designed to assess your application of laws and regulations for the specific states, and is taken by recent College of Pharmacy graduates shortly after they receive their degree. The exam is also taken by licensed pharmacists who want to practice in other jurisdictions and pharmacists who are MPJEC certified. So ultimately, the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy, or NABP, they have an entire webpage dedicated to MPJE to tell you exactly what you need to know about the exam, how to register, all the questions that you potentially have before the exam, during the exam, and then how you receive your results after. So they are the body that ensures that the MPJE goes smoothly and that all pharmacists know exactly what's happening in the process. Alrighty, so the MPJE is a 2.5-hour exam. It's 120 questions. And ultimately, you don't have to take the entire time. If you finish early, you can leave early. And the exam, again, is state specific. So depending on the state, the questions will be different. And with the 120 questions, from what I see online, you have to have a 75 to pass. Don't quote me because I'm not exactly sure, but the results are given within 7 days, and it's a pass-fail examination grade. So I mentioned previously that the exam is state specific, so I took the North Carolina exam, and because of that, I felt most comfortable taking the NC exam because I study in North Carolina, so I went to pharmacy school there. I worked in pharmacies in North Carolina, so I kind of had a good idea of the laws. And then number 3, I had a lot of resources. So the pharmacists around me were all licensed in North Carolina, so they had tools and the things that they used to prepare for the exam. So I kind of used those things to prepare. Okay, so now that we have all the logistics out of the way, I'm going to talk about how I personally studied for this exam. So I used this book from the North Carolina Association of Pharmacists, or NCAP. If you are not in my state, there are pharmacy associations in nearly every state, and they may have a copy of a book that helps you prepare. So a comprehensive review of the things that you need to know that pertain to pharmacy laws within your state. So I used the NCAP book for preparation. For my overall timeline, I studied for the exam for about 2 to 3 weeks. And I think that was enough time for me to feel pretty comfortable before walking into the examination room. So I would say if you're interested in taking the exam, I would give myself about 2 to 3 weeks to prepare. So before you do anything, before you dive into the book that you are going to order from your board of pharmacy or from whatever organization in your state produces a comprehensive review of the exam, you need to review the competency statement. So it's essentially the learning objectives or the focus of the exam. So it gives you a list of different areas that you need to be fully aware of before you sit and take this exam. So before we jump into exactly how I used the book to study for the exam, I will share it was between $100 and $200. So I'll put something on the screen to let you know exactly how much it cost for the book, but I think it was a good deal for being able to pass the exam on the first attempt. So within the book, it's about 90 pages, and the way that I approached it is I did 10 pages a day over the course of 9 to 10 days. And reading those 10 pages, it wasn't that difficult, but within the book there are practice questions that essentially gauge how much you learned after you read a certain section. So what I would do is I would read my 10 pages for the day. I would write notes as I was reading because I learned by writing. And then I would take the practice exam that ended whatever section or answer those practice questions. And then there is an answer key at the back of the book that you can use to check your answers. If I got something wrong, I would then do more research to figure out why I got the question wrong and then write that out as well. So ultimately, reading 10 pages a day, answering those questions, writing notes, and then reviewing any material that I missed. And then if I couldn't find the answer to anything, I have a group of friends that I studied with in pharmacy school. Shout out to Emily, Yusra, and Bethany. I would just reach out to them and ask any questions that I had that I didn't truly know the answer to. Okay, so I have a list of things that I genuinely focused on as I was going through the book. I mean, of course, it's important to focus on a lot of things as you read, but going through 90 pages, it's important to kind of have your hat on of what's most important to think about as I'm going through. So the first thing I would say that's most important is knowing about controlled substances. So there's a list in this book that essentially gives you the name of all the controlled substances and what class they fall into. So knowing exactly which drugs are Schedule 2, Schedule 3, Schedule 4, Schedule 5, and then knowing the laws that apply to those different drugs is vastly important, just because controlled substances are a huge part of a pharmacist's job. The next thing I focused on was who can prescribe what. So knowing if a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant, an MD, what types of providers can actually prescribe prescriptions is important to know, because the exam will assess essentially if this prescription comes from this person, can you actually fill that prescription? So an example of this would be what types of drugs can a dentist actually prescribe. So if you know a dentist can't prescribe something that's going to be for, I don't know, osteoporosis, but ultimately a drug that a dentist can't prescribe, you have to be on the lookout for those things. The next thing I focused on was federal versus state law. So whichever one is the most strict is the one that you have to follow. So within the book there was a section for federal law, but honestly I didn't focus on it if the federal law was more lenient than the state law, because you have to follow whichever one is most strict. So there's no point in reviewing a ton of federal law if the state that you live in has more strict laws. So the next thing I focused on was pharmacist responsibility. So the responsibilities of a pharmacy manager. Record keeping was absolutely a huge part of what I paid attention to. So how many days do you have to keep a certain record? Where do you store it? Who has access to it? So all the things about record keeping were vastly important. And that goes directly into board of pharmacy inspections. So what do you need to know when the board of pharmacy comes in? Where should all the records be? And how to access those things were other focus areas for me when I was studying for the MPJE. Another thing that was really important was the components of a prescription. So if you receive an electronic prescription or a paper prescription, what factors have to be on the prescription for you to be able to fill it? So that's really important, because if you receive or see a prescription on the exam, you have to know if you can actually fill that prescription based on what's present on the paper or on the computer screen. And then the last thing that I focused on was over-the-counters. So in North Carolina, a controlled substance in the form of cough medicine can be given over the counter. So knowing those specific laws about over-the-counter controls is really important. I also paid attention to Sudafed laws or pseudoephedrine laws. So this book was absolutely monumental for me passing, or key to me passing, the MPJE on the first attempt. It was really helpful. It had practice exams, practice questions. It was delivered in a format that was straightforward, simple, and to the point. So it was helpful for me to pass. I will say the only downside of this book is that they do have an answer key, of course, at the back of the book, but there aren't any explanations for why a certain answer is correct and why other answer choices are not correct. So one of the downsides is just not having the rationale behind why certain answers are what they are. So to wrap things up, the MPJE is the pharmacy law exam that pharmacists have to take to become a licensed pharmacist in whatever state they're interested in. If you're interested in practicing pharmacy in 5 states, you have to take 5 different MPJEs along with the NAPLEX. Ultimately, every state has a different test based on your own state laws. For me personally, I took the North Carolina exam, and I used the North Carolina Association of Pharmacists, or NCAP. They have this comprehensive review that I used to study for the exam. I took about 2 to 3 weeks to take it, 2 to 3 weeks to study. I read about 10 pages a day, took the practice test, took the practice questions. Ultimately, I felt very prepared for the exam. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching my video and learning about how I passed the MPJE on the first attempt. If you are interested in learning more, or if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section down below. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you click on another video.